Okay, so everyone who's following the stream right now, we're just about to start in 3 minutes. If you're watching the replay of the stream, you can forward 3 minutes to the start of the session. For now, we're just setting up, welcoming everyone. Also for you in the Zoom room, we have a few people in the Zoom room. If you want to share with us where you are in the world, put that either behind your name, change your name, or put that in the chat. Then our already diverse team has an idea. Spread across the world right now. From San Francisco, Canada, Thailand, New Zealand. Welcome, Margaret. I remember most of you I've seen at least once in one other session here with us in the Zoom room. How many have you attended already? Can you either show me with your hands or pop it in the chat? Whoa, 4, 5. Wow. Yeah. How was it so far? Terrible? No, great. 2 thumbs up. Nice. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we just had surrender pose before this session. Did you attempt that one? Or did you not? Yeah? One? Okay, no. Yeah, it's hard to get all of them in. I mean, there's so many different time zones, different times. So, yeah, you were asleep. I was asleep too. Right. I guess New Zealand is also rather bedtime at that time, isn't it? I think maybe early morning. Yeah. Nice.
Very valid form of surrender sleep. Diligent practice.
I was practicing very thoroughly. Right. Okay, wonderful. So yeah, if you want to put on your video while you're with us in the Zoom room, it's always really nice. You don't have to, but it's nice to get some somatic feedback and see how the share lands with you as well. So Tess has some more guidance on how the pose is going for you. I know if you want to also change your name. Yeah, great. Laura was incredible doing surrender. Great. I might watch the replay later. Even I have to catch up. Yeah. Wonderful. And yeah, the invitation again, join in as much as you can for whether this is the replay or the stream or you're in the room with us. You learn most by doing it. You don't have to and always adjust it for yourself, but it's really an experiential learning. So the more you do it with us, the more you really gather the insights and learn through your whole body. So that's my invitation as well. And then we're on the hour. So we're here for another session of EYP, Embodied Yoga Principles. And I'm really happy to have Tess with me today. Tess is one of our EYP teachers and so much more. I'll introduce her in a second. Today we're looking at inspiration pose or being uplifted. So, but before diving into that, I'll mention a couple of things. So EYP is a system that really looks for that transfer from the yoga mat off into real life. And that's why there are also 3 different ways of looking at it. There's a personal application where you can simply do poses and learn for yourself, gain insights, super valid. And then there's also the possibility to include that in yoga sessions, to include that into your yoga practice, into a flow, integrate that, combine different poses and become creative with that. So that's another option. We also offer an entire training for that, for which we have currently still. You can win. Is that still active? Can you pop that in the chat? Yeah, wonderful. So on Facebook, we're running what is it? A competition, not even. You just gotta click join, and then there's a kind of an automated way of getting one name out, and you can win one of these yoga teacher trainings in the system. And the third way is coaching. So the coaching application is something I personally use a lot, and it's basically using the body to give people insights, to give the people I work with deeper and experienced insights of what's going on and offer them ways out of it. It can be used as a homework and applied in so many different beautiful ways. And there's a real quick win and changed my coaching practice fundamentally. And I just want to show you a brief video so that you maybe get an insight into this is when you would decide to train to become a coach and use it in coaching, this is what it's like. Just our quick video.
What the EYP course for coaches has to offer you is a way to shift things from getting stuck in the head and getting into the body. These very simple forms can be done in normal clothing, in any setting, anywhere, and you can then begin to look at the patterns that might be keeping your clients stuck. As a coach, I use this mostly with my clients with intimacy and relationship and communication, and as soon as I get them to move from the cerebral part of the conversation and getting them down and into their body.
See yourself as you see other people, because I have a very critical eye at the moment.
So when you sign up, there's plenty of support available to you. We have a private Facebook group that you are welcome to join. We have monthly Q&A calls, so you get a lot of ideas of how other people are using the same things.
Great. So this hopefully gives you a little insight of what EYP is also within a coaching context. And as you might have seen, it can be quite emotional. So if anything, one advice I give, really take care of yourself. And I'm sure Tess will say a lot more about that as well. Another thing is you saw there are 26 poses, and in this week we're focusing on one pose only per session, which is a lot of time and really allows us to dive deep into the different facets, different applications, different ways of doing it. And also because we have so many different teachers with us, there's really a different flavor that every teacher brings. And today I'm really, really happy to have Tess with me. I personally met Tess, I think, in England, but you're based in the States as well. And you've kind of been really closely connected to the entire Embodiment Unlimited and Embodied Yoga Principles crowd and community. And I'd say the community is one of my favorite parts of the whole thing anyway. But yeah, you're a 5 rhythms teacher, a Dharma and yoga facilitator. And you're also an artist, therapist, writer, and accomplished contemporary dance producer. You're the founder of Wild Moves, which uses silent disco headsets to facilitate conscious dance classes outdoors in areas of wild beauty. So really bringing together various elements of embodiment, in my opinion. And today I'm excited that you're going to share inspiration with us and hopefully help us maybe be uplifted a little bit. So Tess, I'll leave it up to you. And yeah.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Alicia. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where in the world you are. Good to be with you all today. And this inquiry into inspiration, into the own active part we can play in our own inspiration. Sometimes we get those moments that inspiration comes to us, you're in the bath or you're driving. But how we can work with our own embodiment to cultivate that, to cultivate what matters most. So let's begin with the body. We'll go more into where this might be useful, but let's start. And with any of these suggestions, adapt them to what you need. I'm going to demonstrate them standing. If you need to be sitting down, sit down. If you need to be completely laying down doing micro versions, do that. So we do work deeply, and I support your own body listing and your own investigation within that. So, okay. So begin right where you are. On Zoom, on Facebook, on YouTube. Feel your feet on the ground. Feel your breathing. Notice, is it tight? Notice your gaze. Are you streaming at the Zoom screen? Woo. I know many days on screen can do that to us. Widen your gaze. Feel that sense of being in a room. We're going to begin with a micro version of this pose. And just tilt your spine back a little bit. And then reach your arms up. And we're orientating our head upwards. looking out, and let it go. And notice if you can, a sense of kind of dropping back into your body, into your felt experience of that, rather than I've got to do this, I've got to get it right, I've got to push through. Like, drop into this session. So once again, you can take a step back with one foot. I'm going to step back so you can see what I'm doing. Stand, step back with one foot. We're reaching the body backwards and we're reaching our arms up. We're not curving forwards, we're receiving and orientating up. And let that go. And because we're yogis, we'll swap legs, we'll do it on the other side. One foot back, one foot forwards. More weight on the back leg. Lean the body back, orientate the head up, reach the arms up, out. Being here, landing into this moment. Looking up and out of our mind and our thoughts, into the room, and let it go. So that's the very basic form of inspiration pose. And we start in EYP, we start with a posture. We start with taking a shape. And we explore that with mindfulness. Is this familiar in my life? Is this like, whoa, I never take space for that. I'm just doing. Or is it like, wow, I'm kind of always doing that and maybe I could do with some action. So come in again. Step back with one foot. More weight on your back foot. Feet about hip width apart. Reach back, arms up. And as you take this shape, notice, is it familiar? This feeling of opening to inspiration, this feeling of stretching out, stretching up. And let it go. And again on the other side, feet hip width apart. Our spine is receptive. Our gaze is upwards. And let that go. So thinking about this quality of inspiration in your own life, we'll begin with checking in. How inspired do you feel in your life right now? 10 is like, I'm on fire. I know what I'm doing. I know where I'm going. I'm setting this up. I know who I'm working with. Yes. And 1 is like, oh, pandemic, COVID, Zoom, tiredness, whack. So just check in. Where are you on a scale of 1 to 10? You can pop it in the chat, or you could just acknowledge that for yourself. Got some 8s coming through. I'm happy to hear that. I know a lot of you been on these calls and are probably feeling very, very topped up. And we can work with cultivating this sense of inspiration. And I know for myself, sometimes there can be a grief. I can feel like I ought to be inspired all the time, much as I ought to be in perfect shape and all the rest of it. And it's okay if you're not feeling perfectly inspired, and it's wonderful if you are. Part of UIP, as we come to these realizations about ourselves, there can be okay, there's a little uncomfortableness in realizing where I am in relation to this, and then choosing to cultivate something different. And we'll think about one area of our life where we'd like to become more inspired. Because to be inspired in our whole life is a lot. It's a lot to take on: my relationship, my job, my career, my life purpose. But think about one area where you're like, ooh, I've got a yearning. I have a yearning to contribute in this, or to have more depth or more meaning in that. We're going to open ourselves to inspiration. It's one of those mysterious qualities, inspiration, isn't it? Sometimes we can read something, we can activate it in ourselves, and sometimes we just go, wow, I saw that thing today, or I had that conversation with something, or something is alive in me, something is growing within me. And we can work with different ways of doing this pose. So we'll come into an exploration of doing inspiration pose. So come in again. Stand on your mat or your floor. One leg forward, one back. Lean back. And take this on as a kind of fiery, I'm going to be inspired. I'm going to do it. I'm going to figure it out. Notice how your breathing is when you do it like this. Notice how your shoulders are. And let that go. Same pose, totally different mode of doing it. Change sides. Come in, back foot down, front foot. Lean in, reach up. Open up. And do this as a kind of a watery version. Like, oh, I'd like to call this in. I'd like to feel more. I'm sort of exploring. I'm opening to. And let that go. Was that familiar? That watery receptive. Come in again. One foot back. Feel your feet on the ground. Feel the strength of your legs. Feel your hips, your pelvis, your belly, your spine, your muscles, the bones, the physical, earthy structure of your body. Feel your weight, gravity pinning you to the earth, the solidity of your body. And from there, reach your arms up, looking up towards the sky. Feel maybe your core is engaged. I know mine is leaning back like this. Here I am of the earth, solid, present, available for inspiration in this body, reaching up for it, being here, present for it. An earthy version. And let that one go. Is that one familiar to you? This same pose, this very different quality of it. And finally, we'll explore an airy version. One foot forward, one back. Feel the breath coming into the body, the space in the rib cage, the literal inspiration of breath coming in and out. Breath moving, arms reaching. Drishti or gaze looking up. Space in body, space in mind. Space for inspiration to come in. The airy version of this pose. And let that one go. One of the amazing things about EYP is we can discover how we are the common denominator, or how our clients are the common denominator in this. So what was familiar for you in that? How do you do inspiration pose? Just reflect for yourself. Do you like, I've got to get it done? Or are you kind of like, oh, come to me, inspiration. I don't really, I'm not sure I really want to be here, but if you could just show up and sort my life out, that would be great. I'm being slightly parody. But notice your own pattern. What's your relationship with doing these poses? And then a question for you. How would you like to do inspiration pose? How do you want to show up for calling inspiration into your life, calling in passion into your life, calling in potency into your life? What do you need? And take on the pose in that way for yourself. Find your own embodiment of that. I know for me, earthiness tends to serve me. I can be like, pinging ideas. And this ground piece for me is like, be present, be solid. So take a moment now Do this pose the way that you want inspiration to come to you. Do you want to be more fiery with it? Feel the embodiment of that quality in your body. Let it go when it's time to do so, and hold it if that's true for you. If you're like, I want to stay and bring this in, then that too. One of the core things that we work with in EYP is, how is yoga relevant to our lives? What do we need to grow, to tend, to cultivate in our lives? What do we need to go forward? There can be this kind of sense of being ping-balled around by life. And we practice yoga for our core, for our center, for our physicality. But what happens if we practice it for kind of the core tenets of our life, the core beliefs, the core values of our life? The heartful stuff, the stuff that really matters, that can get lost in the day-to-day. And I think that this link back to our life is the bit that makes EYP precious. Rather than this, I'm going to get my yoga done. There can be this kind of body fascism, like I have to do yoga so I look good, so I can perform. So, I have mixed feelings about that. I'm more interested in how we can be present for what matters, how we can step in for what matters. So let's try a micro pose, a little version of this, of inspiration pose. So let's work with just bringing a little receptiveness into our spine. So rather than being forward, we're just dropping back some. And lift your gaze slightly. Pretty much do this safely in public. Feel a slight engagement in your core, kind of activeness in your own receptivity. Notice how you feel when you do that, lifting your gaze, opening your spine. We can use these poses as balances. There isn't a pose in EYP called mobile phone pose, but if there was, it would be head down, crunch over, crunch in, scroll down. And pretty much inspiration pose is the direct opposite of the non-existent mobile phone pose. We're looking to something outside of ourselves. And sometimes inspiration can be this relationship with something greater than us. And by that, I don't mean some old dude in the sky wearing sandals. I know for me, every time I drive across the Golden Gate Bridge, it's greater than me. It fills me with a sense of spaciousness. And in inspiration, there's layers of relationship we can work with. So we'll take on this pose now for layers of relationship. If you need to do this sitting down, do it sitting down. If you're happy standing, continue standing. There's a variation into the basic pose, core engaged, spine up. This is the I version. Here I am, doing my practice, taking a stand, making space for inspiration in my life, making space to hear my heart, making space to hear the gifts that I'm giving, the instructions that I need, making space for what matters. This is my practice, my taking a stand for me. Swap if you need to. Swap feet. Come in again, feel the base of the body. Chest opening, chest receiving. And in this one, just try bringing your arms down towards a we. You can see on the Zoom screen, some of us are nearly touching fingers. What am I inspired by in community? Where do we inspire each other? Who do I need to reach out literally to be inspired, to check in? What am I inspired to give, to offer? different poses, but what am I inspired to reach into, to reach across to? Who am I inspired to reach out to? And notice again, like, does it hurt to do that version? You're like, I've got to reach people. You know, I know for me, I can have that overgiving. Find a comfortable version, let it drop if it's too much, come back to yourself, apply your own safety belt first. And then the next version, the I, the we, the community, is the kind of the it of inspiration. What place? What is it that inspires me? What is it that makes me go, wow, I feel totally filled up and like I've got it to give? I think inspiration's kind of bold and daring in this day and age. This consumer culture that we must buy more, we must consume more, we must need more, I don't have enough. To be like, wow, I don't need to buy anything or do anything. Like, it's miraculous. We live on a planet that's spinning around the earth. We came from a little tiny sperm. You know, we're birthed, we have technology that we can see each other across the world. It's literally extraordinary and deeply ordinary. And there's something in that owning our own inspiration in life that stops that more that we need. So one more time, we'll come into the pose again. Can be a micro version if you need to sit down. Chest open, arms reaching, looking up, out of ourselves. What inspires you? Is it mountains, trees, ocean, dancing, art, community, social justice? What makes you go, whoa? And let it go. There's this paradox to inspiration. You know, it's there in the word breath. You know, we are inspired every breath we take. Our diaphragm goes, I'm going to breathe in for you, and we breathe in. And at the same time, we can choose to, I'm going to deepen my breath. I'm going to create more space. I'm going to slow things down. This paradox between being inspired, it's something that happens, and how we can cultivate our own inspiration in life. And I think there's also a kind of, there's a solidity, there's a sense of self in this pose. When we stand in it, we have to be firm in order to lean back and reach out. You know, we have to have a solid base. Our legs are engaged, our belly's engaged, our arms are engaged. We're here, an active participant in inspiration. We're taking responsibility for our own inspiration. It's one of the wonders of EYP is we can grow, we can cultivate, we can change, we can support as yoga teachers, others in changing. As coaches, we can stand alongside people and go, wow, you know, do you think that might work for you? How would that be to embody that? You know, I've been hearing you say this for a few sessions. How would it be to try on? It's kind of to stand with each other as active participants in our own transformation, which is kind of a strange paradox because this is actually a receptive pose in EYP. It's one of the yin poses. And there's, just as, you know, we worked earlier this afternoon with this surrender and kind of active surrender, there's this peculiar paradox in being an active participant in our own inspiration. So that's a lot of words. Let's take a breath. Feel your body in front of the screen. Body breathing. Drop your shoulders. Look up slightly. Microversion. And check in how you're doing. We've been playing with this for about 20 minutes now. How do you feel? we'll do a few more investigations, and then we'll go into a Q&A. So there can be this question of, where do I need inspiration? Where do I need this? And it'd be kind of, I don't know about you, but when I'm not inspired, I'm just kind of like, nah, 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 nah. There's a lethargy, there's a downwards, there's a momentum, there's a tired, a stooping, a forwards, a collapse. And there's something in the upwardsness, in the openness, in the back, in the receptivity of this pose that is making a micro change for that. And this for me is where EYP gets interesting, kind of in terms of culturally. We have our own practice. And also in terms of leadership and in terms of society, in terms of what this moment's needed. Some of us need to step back to make room for others, you know, to make room for other things to come in, other paradigms to come in. So as we step back and open to inspiration, it softens this we have to do and me and I have to. Like, if I listen in, what's my gift to give? What's my contribution here? This planet is on fire, sometimes literally, living in, in Northern California. And how can our practice not just be about ourselves? And I know for me, my yoga practice is deeply about me. I feel so much better afterwards. And yet, how can we use EYP to grow as humans, to see what's needed in front of us? And what's our work to do? There's this yearning, I think, as humans to contribute. So, yeah, something in this EYP pose of, we're always in this kind of, I know what I want from life. And as we step back and receive and look up, it's like, and what does life want from me to give? What does life want from me to bring into my yoga practice, to my teaching practice, my coaching practice? What's required of me? What's that inspiration of, this is what I'm in service of? Yeah. These are some quite big topics, inspiration, and it's quite broad. It's quite hard to put in a concrete form as to what that might be for you. And I think some of it is also building our willingness to be with the sensation of being inspired, of like, sometimes it comes up literally, a bird flies past, you're like, whoa, or you get a hit about your own life of like, oh, I know what I need to do. Inspiration can take us, have its way with us. We can surrender to it. And there's part of this back reaching in of like, okay, life, inspire me, use me up, move through me, put me in service of something. And that for me, yeah, is part of doing this work, so that our practice is for something beyond ourselves. So I'm going to pause for a breath there. Questions, comments. What's alive for you about cultivating inspiration in your life? I know we're on various platforms, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Zoom. I can't see all of you.
So we had a question come in already, which relates very much to nature and what the role of nature is within the context of inspiration. And I guess you have a lot to say to that. So.
I think part for me, role of nature is part of this feeling of this earth. There can be this sense of being a separate self, and this is my body doing my yoga practice in my room. And I know I teach a lot in nature. Most of my classes I teach are outdoors. And there's something about the role of nature and inspiration of actually feeling our animalness, our physicalness, our humanness, our embodiedness on earth. And that somehow we belong here, although I think part of the human experience is always the sense of not belonging. But that as part of the trees and the earth and the skies, like, I can be here. And I think amongst fellow humans, there's this, I'm a human, I've got it together, I'm articulate, and I know how to be a professional person. And I think in in being in nature and in engaging with nature, there's a kind of a dropping your screen face or your professional face. I think also there's an attunement, a literal physical attunement that happens in terms of nature and inspiration of, wow, the wind's moving through the trees, or sunlight on water, or these things that calm the nervous system down. So, and for me, there can be this, it's hard to talk about the body without kind of referencing trauma. And sometimes it can be really uncomfortable to be present to our own physical experience, to be in touch with what's inside of us. Sometimes that's a lot to be with. And I think nature is an excellent kind of thing to be physically present with that's a safe resource outside ourselves. It's better than watching a screen or a television. It's like I'm looking beyond you into the ivy that's just outside my window. That I can be present with that and I can resource into this moment with something when sometimes the sensations inside the body with working with the EYP or working with mindfulness can be too much. So nature's a kind of safe base to be here and now when sometimes the inner world can whirl and swirl a lot. And I'd say if that comes up for people, come back to feet, come back to the surface of the body, to the skin. There's this phrase of coming to our senses, that yoga brings us to our senses, literally, of sight, of touch, of physicality, of feet on ground. And it stops that inner world whirling and swirling. And that when we practice yoga, particularly if we're working with these EYP psychological principles and like working a little bit with our inner world, challenging ourselves to grow, like if you're overstimulated, come back to your sensory awareness. Nature's a great one for that. Come back to the wind moving through the trees. Yeah.
Thank you so much. There's another question. When would you use this pose with clients?
I think in clients and in leadership roles, there can be a receptiveness to, if you're working with vision or values, what are my vision and values as a leader? And also this kind of stepping back, what does this organization need? What does this structure need? What does this, not-for-profit I'm working with or for-profit working with? If I step back outside my own agenda of this and shareholders and stakeholders and doing and receiving, putting myself in a way out the way, opening, seeing broader, widening my gaze. Right? For me, inspiration pose is a bit like a mini away day for organizations in terms of coaching and working with clients in organizational settings. Is just take a minute, just come back a moment, just open up, just look out, just pause, just feel the strength that you have. Just see what arises when we stand and stop and listen and see. Because I think with clients and coaching and leadership in our own business, whichever client that you're working with, there can be this to do to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. And that's all valid. We have to take action points. But inspired action feels so much more potent than squirreling hamster desperately doing action. So to empower our clients to take a moment. Yeah. I can see Tanya's just said something about creatives too. I spent 10, 15 years of my life working with dancers and working with choreographers. And to really there's another of these strange Zen cones of like, what's the work that a choreographer wants to make or an artist wants to make? And what's the work that wants to come through them without being too wafty about it, but really grounded. Like, what's your place? What's your offering? What's your social commentary to make? What's your work to make? It's not a kind of, ooh, it's a, ooh. Okay, I'm here. I'm available for ideas. And as we all know, we can take inspiration pose. Ideas won't come on demand, but we can practice this. Okay, put my mind back, put my body back, open, stretch, reach, stand, present, core engaged, available for my life. Let's just practice bringing that state of being into me. And hopefully at some point that inspiration will rock up and kind of blast on through. So it's a practice of making ourselves available to life in a way. That's the receptive element, and why it's in that, the receptive, the yin part of these 26 poses.
Thank you, Tess. I personally also noticed that when doing the fiery expression of it, it clashed for me internally, because I was like, but that's the mode I'm going to when I drive actively and I want to do and not let things happen through me. So that was very tangible for me. So thanks for saying it again as well.
I think, in its purest form, there is a kind of an area spacious, a looking out. There's a breath-based, inspiration-based, but it's so interesting to use the 4-element model to be like, how do I do life? Is this how I want to do life? How would it be if I did life differently? It's one of those kind of core EYP questions of, and where in my life would it be relevant to do it differently? Maybe it's working perfectly. So I so hear you on that clash between doing inspiration. Yeah.
Could you also say a couple more words about how, as a yoga teacher or teacher, you'd bring that in for a group?
Yeah.
Inspiration. Thank you.
Yes. And my yoga training as well as the UIP was at Spirit Rock. So I'm really that Dharma, that breath. And a lot of my practice is like, okay, that was a lot of somatic inquiry, moving the shoulders back. So for me, for bringing that in, is this real standing slowly, seeing what's arising, receiving, listening, opening, seeing what's moving through, letting the body settle. So then I'd place it generally towards the end of the class. I wouldn't start a class with people who've just rushed in, caffeinated, trying to find a parking space. Let's go straight into inspiration pose, because everyone's to be like, wait, what? Am I in the room? When you've worked for 75 minutes or 90 minutes, when we've dropped into the body, is a good time to bring that kind of inquiry in. So I think placing structuring within a yoga class towards the end. Paradoxically, within coaching, that may be different, is before you get into that structure of a coaching session, you're like, what are some steps you could take? What might you want to do? What would you choose to do? It would probably be earlier on in a one-on-one coaching session, because there's a more, in that arc of a coaching session, it's in that ideas finding, it's in that receptive. Unless you were working with someone that was totally driven, in which case, go and do this for 20 minutes a day, without yanging it. But so I'd probably put it earlier within that. So, I think a lot of these poses in EYP, we share with each other. We share what comes up with that. And it can be something some of it may share, and some of the deeper inspirations we come, you may not be ready to share all of it. So as a facilitator, if someone's just got their deepest, most tenderest dream as to what's most precious for them, this may be one of the ones where you ask them to be less verbal, to write on it, to draw on it, to think on it, to reflect on it, and not to be like, tell your neighbor your most tender dream, so to be really respectful with these poses. And the ones say where no, it may be perfect to share, to hold yourself accountable. For something like inspiration, it's a little seed. You might want to keep it to yourself while it sprouts, reaches all. So as facilitators, to be mindful of the content. We never know what will come up for people, but to be sensitive with the kind of questions we're asking. So, yeah. Yeah, Tanya, I just seen you using it after journaling in terms of moving forward. And that's what is that next step. So to be active in our inquiry.
It's also almost
Any
what you
final
said.
questions? Where'd you go?
So far, there are no questions anymore, but I'm reminded of the entering pose, given that comment as well that Tanya made, and that coming from inspiration, as you just described, will be a very different moving forward than coming from, I got to do this in my head, and this is my goal over there, instead of like coming from that inspired inside out. Yeah.
Yes. And these balances, you can work with from kind of reaching into that to coming back to yourself, to this kind of self-containment, or to enthusiasm, to, whew, I've got it to offer, spine forward, reaching out. But sometimes they can take a little landing into the body so that we're not just, I've got some treasure, I'm going to give it away. Like, hang on a minute. Let's pause, let's receive, let's let that settle in the body. And I think part of this EYP, in many ways, there's less physicality, but there's so much information that comes with working deeply in this way. So to allow that space between poses, it would be brutalizing to do a kind of a normal vinyasa class with those level of question going through that. Like, you're just going to do bad things to people's psyches. So less is more, and to let the insights that come percolate through. And I really respect EYP for the depth that it brings quickly for that. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Are there any further questions, either in the room or those of you who are watching the stream? We're still with you as well. So if you have another question for Tess right now regarding inspiration pose or anything else, maybe, Tess, are you teaching another pose as well throughout the week
Yes.
now?
Openness on Thursday. So a similar kind of, yeah. The receptive. Let's finish with a pose again, with taking a moment. So one last time, take a stand where you are in your room, in front of your screen. Take a stand in this moment, in the middle of your life. Feet on ground, ankles, knees, pelvis, spine, wiggle. Breathing, rib cage, feeling the length of your body. Feeling your sense of presence. Drop your shoulder blades down. And then wide base, step back, step in, land down. Strength of body rooting. Arching back, openness. Eyes looking upwards, head tilting upwards. Arms reaching out, creating space to come in. Strength in body, space in mind. Breathing. Creating space in life for inspiration. Holding it, making yourself available for inspiration, going, wow, gosh, life, it's amazing, it's miraculous, I'm alive, I'm here. Come on, life, move through me, use me up, make me inspired, on fire, delighted. Calling it in, feeling that sense of wow within yourself. Feeling that aliveness in your body and letting that go. And once more on the other side, feeling your way in, we'll go in quietly. Take the pose. Feel inspiration. Your version, your flavor, how that shows up for you. Acknowledging if you find some. I'm feeling more inspired. Letting it go, coming back to standing. Noticing how you can work with your inner world, how you can use EYP to develop aspects of self. To call in inspiration or sense of, whoa, I'm I'm actually alive. I missed that for a moment. Levity. Big picture. Stand in that for a moment. Tiny micro version. Leaning back, looking up. Thanking yourself for your practice, for your willingness to investigate, for doing this work, for being part of this community. Thank you all. Christina, I know you have some wise words to say about the shape of the rest of this week.
I do. And I also want to ask because we have another 3 minutes and there were 2 questions that popped in now.
Oh,
if you'd still be willing to respond to them. So one was about the arms and whether or what the difference is between coming from the heart or coming from the sides, if there's anything you can say about that.
Yeah. In terms of arms, it's a reaching up and an opening out. So you're twisting that little finger backwards not really twisting, but as a direction. So the opening, and you can feel that across the back of the shoulder blades. And you can feel the heart opening that way. We're not twisting forwards and kind of trying to do curl forwards and lean back at the same time. We're opening and arching that way. Yeah. And you can play around between I'm going to call this up, in, up, and stretch and reach out, or the kind of, I'm just going to loosely my way in. It can be a very different practice of, I'm choosing to take this, to cultivate this, or let's see how it unfolds in me today. So they can be very specific to explore those variations between the two.
Beautiful. Thank you. And then there's also the question what you would pair with this pose in particular, if you choose another one for a sequence, for instance.
Yeah, I mean, there is, this traditional kind of yoga of opening up, closing down, folding over. And I think there is something in, after we've gone into this, some coming back in. So whether that's surrender pose, whether that's self-care, that there is I've extended, I've received, I've listened. I'm not just then go forward and do. I'm going to come in. I'm going to come down. Maybe it's surrender on the ground of I'm just going to receive what I've had. So although it's a receptive pose, to pair it with a receptive pose again, the more yin for that. Later on, when that's landed, you may then go into developing that as an inquiry. What am I entering into? What am I creating? What am I doing with my inspiration? But I wouldn't go straight to that. It's one of those strange qualities, inspiration, to let it land a little bit and then to find some clarity as to what those action steps are. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. All right, we're at the end of inspiration, hopefully not completely for our life. Thank you so much, Tess. This was a very inspirational class. I felt very inspired throughout, and I suddenly had all these ideas bubbling up, and I was like, gotta write them down. I wonder why suddenly? And then I was like, well, we're doing inspiration, so that makes sense. And thank you for your beautiful poetic way of delivering as well. I very much appreciated that. Yeah. And thanks for everyone who joined and practiced and explored. And as Tess just mentioned, it's really a finding your way. And there is a degree of a pose and doing it in a certain way, but there's also that, what do I need? The inquiry about that a lot. But if you feel inspired now to want to dive deeper, there's still a bunch of classes, a bunch of master classes coming up. Next up, we also have stand pose, to take a stand. And there were some elements in this session already of where do I stand? Maybe what do I stand for in terms of what are my values, and looking at that. So if you would like to join us for that, that's 9 a.m. British Standard Time. And I think my dogs are just going back. Yeah, and also if you want to go beyond the 26 introduction masterclasses that we offer here, which are very beautiful, and I would really invite you to share them with your friends and have them like check it out if they feel like that, or you feel that it might be useful for them. So invite them. But if you want to go beyond and dive deeper, then really just check out the trainings we have. They're beautifully put together. And yeah, thank you, Alicia, for sharing. So there's three options available that if you want to really dedicate some time, and it's an evergreen course, so you can do it at your own pace, basically, and you can choose your own focus. So if you just want to dive deeper for your own benefit, for yourself, then that's an option. If you want to go into the coaching direction, that is very possible too. Then there's an entire course that will help you with monthly community calls as well, and as you saw in the video up front as well, giving you a bunch of tools and ways to make these poses safe. And as Tess said, if anything, it works too well and it goes deep quick. So the emotional and general impact it can have is actually quite profound. And I found in my own coaching practice that it definitely is very effective. So if that interests you, there's a whole course directed at that. And there's also the yoga teacher version, where you learn how to teach these poses to others, how to include them into a yoga flow, how to create that class sort of environment, and work more with groups in this entire system. Yeah, and Alicia has been so kind to post all the links. So if you're interested, simply check them out. And I truly believe that there's so much wisdom we have inherent in our bodies, and there's way less wiggle room to sort of, what the mind often manages to do is explain itself really cleverly and get around our patterns and like, yeah, but this and that and that. Whereas like dropping into the body, it is a quick insight and often gives much more of a true immediate feedback of like, oh yeah, this is what I do in my life. Ooh, and then adding the inquiry that UIP brings is really allowing you to dig deep and understand like, okay, where in my life am I doing this, and how, or where do I need more of this possibly as well. And then to, yeah, coach yourself, coach others into the direction, and unfold and cultivate the qualities that these poses have inherent in them. Yeah, so we have all the links here. I think I mentioned everything that I wanted to say. Thank you so much again, Tess, for your beautiful presentation. If anyone wants to experience Tess again, she's teaching the openness pose. It's 10 p.m. UK slot on Thursday. So
2 p.m. Pacific, 10 UK.
Yeah, so check your time zones. The schedule is up on the page as well. And on Facebook, we keep you updated on a daily basis as well. And yeah, this is it from me. Maybe we can unmute everyone who's with us in the room, and you can share your thanks with Tess, and then we're wrapping
Thank
this
you,
up.
Alicia.
And
Alicia and Christina, thank you for your attending. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Also, if you want to learn no pose, I'm going to teach that later today. How to say no. A bit more yang.
What time today?
What time today? It's at 12 UK, so noon UK time.
Noon UK time. Okay. Thank you.
Alberta should be 5 in the morning. Yeah, 4 or 5.
Watch the recording. How to say no. Set up boundaries. Looking forward to seeing all of you again. Bye, everyone who's been watching us on the stream as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm going to close the room. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.